Would getting everything you want really make you happy? If your touch could turn anything into gold, would that feel like a dream come true? Be honest, most of us have probably imagined something like that at least once. But in this myth, the king who receives that power ends up hiding his ears under a cap and avoiding other people's eyes. It is one man's story, but it carries two curses. One comes from desire, the other comes from foolish pride. And the version most people know is only half the story. At first, it begins like a gift. Midas is already a wealthy king. He has more than most people could ever hope for. But sometimes the more a person has, the more they want. Not because they need it, but because what they already have no longer feels like enough. I think most of us know that feeling in some small way. Even when life is going fine, our eyes drift somewhere else. Something brighter, something bigger, something other people might envy. Human desire works like that. So does Midas. One day, the myth says that Midas welcomes an old companion of the wine god. His name is Silenus. He has lost his way, worn out and unsteady, and Midas does not treat him cruelly. He gives him food, a place to rest, and proper care. That part matters. Midas is not introduced as a monster. He is not just one thing. Like most people, he has more than one side. He can be generous, he can be kind, but kindness does not always cure desire. A person can do something good and still be ruled by the wrong hunger. When Silenus is returned, the god is pleased and offers Midas one wish. Just one. It is the kind of moment that makes you stop and think. If you were given one wish, what would you ask for? Love, health, peace, more time, or some kind of power that puts you above everyone else? Midas does not hesitate. He asks that everything he touches turn to gold. The wish is granted, and for a moment, it must have felt amazing. He touches a branch and it flashes into gold. He picks up a stone and it becomes something bright and precious. Flowers glow, pillars shine, even the dust beneath his feet seems transformed by his hands. You can almost feel the rush of it, the thrill, the sense that the world has finally started to bend in your favor. No more limits, no more lack, no more looking at what others have and wishing it were yours. For a few shining minutes, Midas must have thought he had won. Then dinner arrives. A table is set with warm bread, fruit, water, and wine. He reaches out, and the bread hardens into gold. The fruit loses its sweetness and becomes cold and useless. The cup in his hand can no longer give him water. Even the drink meant to ease his thirst betrays him the moment he tries to raise it to his lips. That image has always felt unsettling to me. On the surface, Midas looks richer than anyone alive, but he cannot enjoy the most basic things. He cannot eat, he cannot drink, he cannot rest without turning comfort into something hard and lifeless. The power that seemed like a blessing has quietly stolen everything that makes life feel like life. He has more gold than ever, but he can no longer live well. He gained the thing people admire and lost the things a human being needs. That is when the lesson hits him, not as an idea, but as hunger. Not as a clever saying, but as fear. He sees that what he asked for was not a gift at all. It was a trap with a beautiful surface. People are often like that. When we want something badly, we picture the reward and ignore the cost. We only start counting what matters after we begin to lose it. Midas pleads with the god to take the power away. He says, in effect, I was wrong. Gold is not better than water. Treasure is not better than bread. A hand that works like everyone else's is worth more than a hand that dazzles the world. The god does not abandon him. He tells Midas to go to a river and wash. Midas rushes there and steps into the water. It runs over his hands, his arms, his body, and the curse begins to leave him. The legend says the river keeps traces of gold after that, as if his mistake settles into the earth itself. Most people stop the story there. Desire led to suffering. The king learned his lesson. He survived. End of myth. When I was younger, I thought that was the whole point too. But Midas has a second downfall. And to me, That is where the story becomes much more human. Because surviving one painful mistake does not automatically make a person wise. Pain leaves a mark, yes, but habits last longer than pain. People can be shaken and still remain the same inside. Later, a contest is held between Pan and Apollo. Pan carries the wild sound of fields and hills in his pipes. Apollo stands for order, beauty, and clear harmony. The challenge is simple. Who is the better musician? Others lean toward Apollo. Midas does not. He chooses Pan. Why? There are different ways to read that moment. Maybe he truly liked Pan's music more. Maybe he wanted to seem bold, different, independent. Maybe there was some stubborn part of him that liked standing against power just to prove he could. That is what makes this part so interesting. People do not make bad choices only because they are ignorant. Sometimes they make them because they are attached to their own taste, their own ego, their own need to be the one who sees things differently. That feels very human too. We are not always wrong because we do not know better. Sometimes we are wrong because we trust our own pride too much. And sometimes, even after life has humbled us once, we still keep one corner of our arrogance locked away, untouched. Apollo is offended, and in the myth he does not strike Midas down. Instead, he gives him a punishment that lasts in a different way. He changes Midas's ears into those of a donkey. Think about how sharp that punishment is. The first curse attacked his body. It made him hungry and thirsty. It turned rest into discomfort. But the second curse reaches somewhere even deeper. It touches shame. It places something humiliating right next to his face, where he can never forget it. He is still alive. He can still eat and drink. But he cannot move through the world with ease. He has to hide. So Midas covers his head with a cap or cloth, always making sure his ears stay out of sight. You can almost imagine the tension of that life. Is someone staring? Did the fabric move? Will the wind lift it? Will someone notice? The first curse was hunger. The second is anxiety. And anyone who has ever tried to hide a painful part of themselves knows how exhausting that can be. But secrets rarely stay where we bury them. The person who cuts Midas's hair eventually sees the ears. Midas commands silence. Tell no one. Speak of this to nobody. The thread is clear, but carrying a secret can be its own kind of pressure. Not always because someone wants to gossip, but because some things become too strange, too heavy, too hard to hold inside. A secret can sit in the chest like trapped air. So that person goes out alone, digs a small hole in the ground, leans down, and whispers into the earth, "King Midas has donkey ears." Just saying it must have brought some relief. Once words leave the mouth, they are no longer pressing against the heart in the same way. The hole is covered again. The speaker walks away. Maybe they believe the secret is safe now. But in the legend, reeds grow from that spot. And when the wind moves through them, they begin to whisper the same words back into the world. King Midas has donkey ears. I love that image. And more than that, it feels true in the way myths often do. Not true as an event, but true as a picture of human life. What we hide does not always disappear. What we push down often comes back in another form. Shame grows louder when we cannot bear to face it. A secret buried in the ground may still find a voice in the wind. At this point, it would be easy to laugh at Midas. The greedy king, the foolish king, the man who brought humiliation on himself. But if we are honest, he is not as distant from us as we might like to think. We want success. We want the kind of life that looks bright from the outside. We want our choices to seem impressive. And when we make mistakes, we want to hide them. We want to keep our weak spots covered. We want to believe that if nobody sees the part of us we are ashamed of, then maybe it loses its power. But it rarely works that way. That is why this myth still holds up so well. It is not just about a king and his impossible gift. It is about the way people mistake shine for value. It is about how easily desire can dress itself up as wisdom. And it is about how often public shame hurts longer than private pain. When I think about Midas now, I do not just see a warning about greed. I see a much bigger question. What kind of life are we trying to build? A life that looks impressive from a distance? Or a life that can still be enjoyed up close? Gold looks beautiful, but you cannot eat it. Power can make people stare, but it cannot give you peace. The things that keep a person alive and whole are often simple: food, water, rest, a face that does not have to hide, a life where you are not constantly managing appearances. That, to me, is the deeper value of this myth. Midas's first failure is that he wants too much of the wrong thing. His second failure is believing that if he hides his shame, he can hide its meaning too. But people do not fall apart only because of what they chase. They also fall apart because of what they cannot admit. So this story goes beyond a lesson about greed. It asks what it means to live like a human being. A hand that grabs more is not always better than a hand that can still hold ordinary joy. Ears that listen well matter more than wealth that only dazzles. And maybe the hardest wisdom in life is not getting what you want. Maybe it is learning what is worth wanting in the first place. So no, the story of Midas is not just a gold story. It is a story about desire, about pride, about the strange fact that a person can survive one disaster and still walk straight into another. And it is also a story about how hunger may pass, but humiliation can echo for much longer. That is why people remember the whisper in the reeds, just as much as the touch of gold. If there is something in your life you want badly right now, it may be worth pausing for a second and asking one quiet question. Will it truly help you live better? Or will it only make you look brighter to other people? Will it make you freer? Or will it slowly become the thing you cannot live without? In this myth, Midas gets exactly what he asks for. Only then does he understand what it costs him. Maybe wisdom begins there, not after we get everything we want, but before. In the moment when we stop and ask what the price might be. The story ends, but the question stays with us. What do you truly want? Gold, or a life that does not need gold to feel enough?